Son, and Holy Spirit.
Amen.
I have to keep reading this particular verse over and over and over again because it's hard for me to keep in my mind. And I think it's probably hard for a lot of people to keep in their mind when we have become a nation and a globe full of warriors. It's what we do. It's our full-time job. It describes who we are. And it is almost turned into something that we believe in more than we believe in anything else. And I love when Jesus says to the disciples and to us, notice, I have to read it. I cannot remember it because I, too, am part of that nation of warriors. Can any of you, by worrying, add a single hour to your lifespan? A single hour by worrying. And you know, we could keep filling that question in. Can any of us cure the person that we're worried about who's sick by our worrying? Can any of us make sure that children who need an education get one by worrying? Can any of us heal the relationships that are broken in our families by worrying? And the answer to all of those is the same to the question that Jesus asked of us all. Can we add an hour to our lifespan by worrying? Of course not. We know we can't. And there's something lovely about this passage when it goes on and Jesus talks about, holds up that example of the flowers for the disciples. Look at the flowers. And we're headed into that time. I know spring is coming. I believe. I'm going to clap my hands like Peter Pan. It's definitely coming. We're heading in that time where spring is going to come. And because of a lot of good work of many people, our gardens are going to bloom like crazy out here. It'll be gorgeous every time we come. And when we look at those flowers, we can think of Jesus' words. Look at those flowers. Did they worry about how pretty it would be that morning? Did they worry about pollinating? Did they worry about the nutrition that they were going to suck from the soil or that was going to come through them through the sunlight? They didn't worry one single bit about any of it, and God gave them every single thing they need. And sometimes that metaphor can work so well, especially when it is spring and we're looking at all that beauty. It can work so well. And we can really rest in it, knowing that God has us, has the care for us, has all that we plan for ourselves and even more. God has that so totally and completely in God's grasp that we can relax and be confident that God is in charge for about 5 minutes. And then we go back to worrying. In part it's because that's what we do, but in part it is also because the culture has pushed this theme of worrying on us so hard. It is 24/7. If you turn on your television right now, if you listen to the radio right now, if you open any newspaper anywhere, there is plenty of information to let you know you should be worried. Not just worried, scared out of your mind. Scared to death. So scared that you've got a bundle of cash stuck under the mattress. Ready, just in case the banks fail. So scared that your pantry should be full of all kinds of things that you're never going to eat. Because they're going to expire before you get to them. How many cans of green beans can you actually eat? But when you're panicked, you can easily have 2 dozen sitting on a shelf. Because you never know what might be coming. Listen to what the papers say. Listen to what the news says. Listen to what our government says. Listen to what everybody says. And they all say, be panicked. We've got to decide who it is we believe in. We've got to decide who it is we trust. We've got to decide who it is we follow. Because just as it said at the beginning of that section of Jesus talking to the disciples, we can't serve 2 masters. Same for us as it was for those disciples. We can't serve the culture and serve God. We can't serve money and fear of money. It's not even so much that it's money. It is this incredible fear of lack. We can't serve that and serve God. It inevitably, when we start serving that other thing, it inevitably lowers our ability to live fully into what God has chosen for us to do. There's a guy I know, I've known him for 20 years. In many ways, we kind of grew up together. We were in our late 20s, early 30s together. And our lives took very different trajectories. And in part it's because of the things we believe in. And Henry is also a fellow Texan, grew up on a farm. And if you know anything about farmers, farmers very often are land and equipment rich and cash poor. Everything depends on the crop this year and how well it did. And if it didn't do well, there is no money. And sometimes people are living very much from season to season to season, and they can feel quite poor. And Henry always did. He was the youngest, shorter than his tall, lanky brothers. He always had hand-me-downs. So things didn't fit him quite as well as they were supposed to fit. He got made fun of when he was at school because he was either wearing high waters or things that were too long. Nothing was ever right. The belt loops left him with a gap around his waist. And he made up his mind, I'm never going to be poor. This is the last time I'm going to experience this in my life. And I remember him talking, we were always talking about generosity. It was our favorite thing to disagree about. And when we talked about generosity, he would always say, I don't understand these people that listen to television evangelists, because that's the only way he could understand generosity, and then just give their money away, and they don't know who they're giving their money away to. And this was right around the time where the United Way had such a horrible scare, a good 15 years ago, in terms of how their funds were actually being used. He took that and ran with it. Proof positive that there's no way you should be giving your money away. But there was an organization that he felt very strongly about. He was an actor, and many of his friends were actors. We were in New York in the late 80s as the AIDS crisis was developing, and he felt very strongly about Broadway Cares Equity Fights AIDS. And he really wanted to give funds to them, and I said, give it! Go ahead and give it. And he said, you know, I'm going to. I'm just a little broke right now. Now listen, other than the fact that he wore high waters in grade school, this guy had never been broke a day in his life. He always, in my mind, he always had enough. But in his mind, he didn't. And for him, the magic figure, and it seems like a lot of us have a magic figure. For him, the magic figure was $100,000 cash in the bank. Not money that he needed to live off of, not money that he was saving for a down payment, but $100,000 cash that just didn't have to get used for anything, that was available whenever he wanted. And when he had $100,000 cash, he was going to give $1,000 of it away. So, you know, the years go on, and that moment does arrive for him, where he did reach that number, that magic number. Single guy, didn't have kids, so there were some expenses that weren't going to happen for him. Saved like crazy, did without a lot, because he was so afraid he was going to be poor. So everything went into savings, everything went into savings. And when he passed that magic number, I said to him, of course I didn't know he was past it, I just assumed he was past it. I said to him, so, did you give that AIDS organization the $1,000? Not yet, because I'm worried that I might run out and be a little thin. So when I get to $250,000, then I'm going to give them the $1,000. Notice something. It's the same $1,000. It's $250,000 later. This is definitely, Henry, I've got to say, a guy who's really good with money. Really, really, really good with it. And when he reached that point where there was $500,000 sitting in cash and investments in his accounts, I said to him, so what's your giving like? How do you handle being generous? I'm thinking about who I might give $5,000 to. Now here we are, it's a good 15, almost 20 years, probably closer to 20 years later that I've known him. He's a multimillionaire. He doesn't want for anything. Whatever he wants, he has. He could afford to be generous with everyone, anyone, however he wants to do it. He could, if he decided this morning, I feel like going to Europe, he could go and take 10 friends. That's just the kind of abundance he has experienced. And his truth is, I am poor. I will never have enough. And not only can I not be generous with any other organization, I can't be generous with my own family, with friends, or with anybody else because I might run out. And I might be that little kid who got made fun of in school. Now his is an extreme example. And it's what we all do. In some way, we all do the same thing. We have our own version of, I don't have enough. I'm afraid of being poor. What do I have to hold on to make sure I can get through the day? And in claiming that as our truth, what we do is claim the culture and the message of the culture, its message of fear and lack. We claim it as our own, and that becomes who we follow. This is a place where we as Christians, we as church, we are in desperate need of healing. We have no idea of the amount of power that the culture has on us and how we operate. That we are generous as we want to be with Verizon Wireless, with Apple Computers, with Starbucks, with Macy's, with whoever wants our money because the culture has told us you cannot live without an iPhone. You will not survive without a $3 cup of coffee. It is simply not going to happen unless you have what everybody else has that has been deemed by advertising departments on Madison Avenue. And we walk around in that, scared out of our minds, that there's not going to be enough. Meanwhile, here God is, so generous with us, meeting all of our needs, making sure that we wake up refreshed in the morning, that we are healthy, that we are happy, that we experience healing, that we see God in action. Here's God doing all of those things. And occasionally we see it. And sometimes we're really grateful for it, for those 5 minutes. And then we jump straight on back into our world.